She's the project manager, and I'm a member, and those are the important things.
Okay. Okay. Terrific.
So it seems like we are live streaming now, and we're just at time. So I'm going to mute myself and stop my video. But yeah, go ahead.
And I will share. Okay. Can we see presenter view?
Yes, it looks that. Well, I think this is presenter view. Yeah.
That means you can see the slide and the whole slide and the screen.
Yes. Yes. Got it.
Okay, we're right at 2:30. Want to give people a minute to make it to the room, and then
Sounds
you
good.
start off, Crystal.
Yeah, I'll give it like a minute. It looks like people are still rolling in pretty quickly.
Okay. And I do need to introduce the two of you.
Oh, right.
Okay. Greta. Only trouble.
All right.
Okay.
Natalie, do you want to start?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the linked data challenges from MARC21 to LRM, RDA, RDF mapping project 505. Addressing the 505 subfield 5. This session is being live streamed to the LD4 YouTube channel and recorded, and will be saved to that channel for future viewing. I have some helpful, I think everybody has seen the slide previously, but I'll just post them in here. We've got some the conference website, code of conduct, Slack invitation, where to post, Twitter and the like are in the chat right now. But I assume at this point, most everybody has seen those and done those. The questions may be posted to Slack and should be answered after the presentation. And now I'll introduce our session presenters. We've got Laura Ackerman from Emory University Libraries and Crystal Uragi from the University of Washington Libraries. Over to you.
Hello, I'm Crystal Uragi, and I'm the project manager for the MARC21 bibliographic to LRM, RDA, RDF mapping and transformation project, or MARC2RDA for short. Our presenter today, Laura Ackerman, is a participant in the project, and she asked me to give you a little bit of context for what our project is doing and how we work. We started the project based on the shared premise that RDA metadata is best expressed as linked data using the LRM RDA RDF ontology, and that's available at the RDA registry. As we see it, in order to implement this ontology, the RDA user community needs functional application profiles, a large data set for testing and development, and the ability to transform our legacy MARC data. Our colleague, Benjamin Riesenberg, is leading the Sinopia Maps project at the UW Libraries. Our project is working on developing a detailed mapping from MARC21 to LRM, RDA, RDF, and a corresponding transformation tool. Our work is free and open to the public, and we hope that these two projects will work in tandem to facilitate widespread adoption of the RDA ontology within the RDA user community. We've assembled an international cross-institutional project team with significant expertise in MARC21, LRM, RDA, RDF, library metadata standards and technologies, and linked data. We are fortunate to have so many experienced and brilliant volunteers because this project has uncovered many complex and difficult problems that we need to make decisions about. We have discussions about these challenging areas during our weekly Zoom meetings and asynchronously via GitHub. Our goal is to reach consensus on each point, but we often end up with differences of opinion. Whether we reach consensus, take a vote, or hand off a decision to the team member or members with the most expertise, we ultimately come to a decision on how or whether to map things and record them in our decisions index, which serves as a quick reference to supplement our mapping spreadsheets, transformation code, and meeting minutes, all of which are very long and can be more difficult to navigate. All of our decisions are provisional at this point, and we have changed our minds about a number of them already. Laura is going to focus on 2 of our decisions during her talk today, and I will hand it over to her.
Thank you very much, Crystal. So this is just a little context about me. I am so much enjoying being amongst some highly knowledgeable and smart people in this group. I have a little bit different perspective. I am not a cataloger nor an expert on RDA. I have somewhat of a checkered past at Emory, but it involves a lot of contact with MARC, way back cataloging, but mostly doctoring it and moving it from place to place. Also other kinds of metadata, discovery systems, building discovery products. And I developed some opinions along the way. As this reference to the Mandalorians, one of my favorite characters in that TV series is Grogu. So can I help move things along? I don't claim to have any magical abilities, but I'm happy that I've been able to contribute and keep up. I'm just going to let this slide linger here for a minute. I suspect that most of the people in this room now are familiar with RDA entities and the fact that there are 4 entities in the library reference model, and that word work means something different here than it does when looking at the bib frame ontology. And we will talk about entities a little bit. Okay, now to 505. 505 is the table of contents, or in MARC definition, the formatted contents note. And it includes titles of separate works or parts of an item, and the field may also contain statements of responsibility that may include authors and volume numbers, etc. And there are 2 flavors, basic and enhanced, and we'll talk a little bit about both. So here's an example of a table of contents from a particular book. And you can see that it's all one long string in a subfield A. That's basic. Some choices made by a cataloger. Page numbers are not transcribed, and the only title that has attribution is the last chapter because it's by a different author. So it's assumed that the main author for the book is the author of all the other chapters. So that's just one variation. So we decided that this table of contents in general gets mapped to RDA note on manifestation. Okay, and here's a picture of that documentation. I'm sorry this is not available, that I can link to it on the web, but it's good documentation, and if you're going to be working with this, you will need to get a subscription to the RDA toolkit. And the only possibility for this is an unstructured single string. Well, that fits pretty well with subfield A. There are limits. In addition to that limitation, there are a lot of other MARC tags that get mapped to note on manifestation. I was shocked when I first found out that there was no title of a table of contents property in RDA, and how we're discovery display designer is going to sort and give the right emphasis to particular kinds of notes. So we decided to put the type of note in the note itself as a prefix, table of contents column. This enhanced 505 is where it gets tricky. So instead of using subfield A, 3 subfields are used to kind of tag different kinds of information within the transcribed table. Title, a statement of responsibility, and miscellaneous information. And here are some examples. We looked at many examples. The first one is kind of straightforward and demonstrates the usefulness of having tagged table of contents. If you have authors, they could be keyword indexed, and the titles could be title indexed in a particular discovery system. And the second one, we start to see how we could get into trouble. So to a human, it would appear that the LH Fellows is the author of all 3 of those titles, but can a machine make that assumption based on the arrangement of the field? Not clear. And then the next one was, we had a good bit of discussion about song titles, many song titles in one subfield T, and multiple creators, responsible parties in subfield R, one with an attribution of their role. How in the world would that kind of data over a large corpus of records be parsed out and be able to be mapped in a meaningful way? So, and there's a link to, we made an issue out of this so we could do discussion offline outside of our meetings. And we came to the question, well, if we were doing original cataloging, what would it look like? And here's where we get to aggregates. Now, aggregates is somewhat new concept in this latest version of RDA. I have no expertise, and nor do we have time to get into it. Suffice it to say that it introduces another level of complexity in making descriptions, and that essentially we will need to create entities, manifestations, expressions, and relate them to the work as a whole. And we have not delved into that within the group yet. We talked about it at our meeting today. And Gordon Dunser made a quip. Someone said, well, how deep do we want to go into aggregates? And he said, it's Titanic level deep. You will implode. Well, hopefully we will not implode. We will emerge and survive. And perhaps this will be a future presentation. But for now, the decision point was reached where we said, just how far, are we able to go at this point? And would it be worth it? And we found that it was difficult to find examples of the enhanced 505s. Some institutions have policies against using that and instead creating added entries for the author and title in the record, which is an approach that's similar to sort of what might be called for in RDA. And it came down to a vote, and I was holding out for, trying to do something to allow that keyword indexing, but I ultimately agreed with everybody that we are not going to map 505 in any special way. We're just going to make them a note on manifestation in a single string. It's less work for catalogers to do that kind of tagging, but it really is a compromise. And it would be even more work to do added entries, and then it would be more work to make separate descriptions. It's a matter of your judgment and motivation. There may be some ways we can get around this, and perhaps I would ask you to think about, are there creative ways that we could look at using some special format for that text string, and perhaps using something called an RDF custom data type, which we're experimenting with. Maybe the parsing part of this could be helped with some machine learning and AI. Should we ask the RDA steering committee to consider a structured option for note on manifestation and other notes? And now I'm going to move on to the next interesting field. And this is just a subfield, but it can apply to lots of different tags. Subfield 5, institution to which field applies. We made a generalization about it, that if the note or the name entry or whatever and its role are only applied to a specific institution. In most cases, not all, there are some exceptions. This means it's about a local copy, and a copy is described as an item. Yeah, that's an item entity in RDA. So here are some examples. So this is describing, some particular characteristics of a copy. Frequent annotations no longer legible because of washing, etc. From a particular collection. Who was a former owner? A lot of this is rare book cataloging. And the information in the 5 is from a code from the MARC code list for organizations. We had a little bit of struggle about this because there's definitely some sentiment among some members of the group about not wanting to mint any more URIs for entities than we absolutely have to. But ultimately, we agreed that it wasn't going to work to just try to make this into a note on manifestation. We needed to do more. So we are going to be minting item URIs and making statements about them mapping the MARC data. But we're going to do more, okay? So there's a preliminary processing step. This was from some ideas worked out by Gordon Dunser and working with Pan Dro, one of our members doing the coding to capture information from id.loc.gov's code list for cultural heritage organizations, which contains the MARC code list for organizations code, so that we could mint a corporate body, IRI, and mint one collection work for each corporate body, for each organization, assign the item as a holding of that organization. And we may publish that data somewhere for reuse. And then we relate the contents of the field, whatever it is, to that item, which is related to a manifestation. So I've kind of talked through the relationship shown in this excellent illustration by Crystal of how this is going to work. And this is a lot to look at, but it's an example of a mock-up, rather, of a mapping. We don't have any actual output yet. We are testing the transformation project, and we should have some soon, and it'll be on our website. When you have multiple fields with subfield 5, you end up minting multiple items. We could not make we decided we couldn't make the assumption that all of the fields were about the same item at that particular institution. So this is going to create some work for people using our transformations. But if they find it important to bring together all the data that relates to specific items and link it to their local item information, they're going to have some post-processing to do. So just a few observations from that. Not a lot of room for vagueness, especially with RDA. And we are not using blank nodes. So IRIs are getting minted. There's no mapping from one ontology to another without some loss, especially if it's MARC. But it's important to figure out what's important to keep. And as Crystal said, we probably will revisit our decisions, and we may make some proposals to the RDA steering committee. So we're running out of time for discussion here, but we'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts about this on the Slack channel. Thank you.
So let's, I believe that Isabella is checking the Slack channel for questions.
Yeah, I see a few people typing here.
Excellent.
One
You do?
early
Sorry.
question. I believe this was talking about creative solutions. And we have, would you be able to approach this through splitting entries before mapping based on the 505 field in a similar way Library of Congress was doing with the 007 and 300 fields?
That was an earlier presentation, and I'm afraid I missed it. Do you have any thoughts, Crystal?
Well, with the 505 in particular, there are some problems with entities. The subfield A's are generally titles. The subfield B's, we don't really know what's in there. It could be anything. It's kind of a miscellaneous grab bag of stuff. ISBD punctuation is not consistently implemented in the 505 field. So that would be a challenge for parsing that our group of volunteers just doesn't have capacity for at the moment. And then also in our subfield R's, we don't separate statements of responsibility that include multiple names for multiple entities in the same subfield R. So if we were to try to split things out, it would be impossible to tell from punctuation and, using machine transformation. It would be impossible to tease out separate people from those subfield R's the way that they're formatted. And I don't know that we could even, I don't know that it would even help to do any sort of pre-processing on those, because it's almost like a human would be needed to parse them out. Yeah, but if the way that we have got our we've got our transformation working leaves the punctuation as it is. So potentially our discovery systems can continue doing the same exact things that they're doing with the 505 notes now. It just doesn't enhance them in a way that we as catalogers wish that we could, because we spend so much time making these notes perfect and formatting them. So yeah, we should still be able to do like keyword indexing for titles, for instance, or an author's index during post-processing, kind of in a discovery layer. But making RDF statements about authors based on those subfield R's isn't something that we can do at scale.
At least we don't see a way to do it right now.
Right.
I think it would involve some probably AI level programming. I was involved with a project that involved tables of contents and trying to parse them out of OCR text. The Rich Cat project, this was many years ago, the Library of Congress was involved too. And we got a tool that the Library of Congress had purchased that said it was going to be able to do something like this, and it turned out that it really couldn't. And I remember, approaching one of our programmers at Emory and saying, do you have any spare time? Would you like to look at this? I'm getting flat turned down. It would be quite a bit of work and probably a lot of training, et cetera, because there's so much variation. When you're talking about transcription and turning that into data, it's tough. But I'm not saying it's undoable. I'm just saying that for this project at this stage right now, I don't think we have the bandwidth to deal with it. More questions?
So there may be some more people typing now, but I have a question, and I'm curious about how this could potentially impact training for new or experienced PCC catalogers, if it would involve a whole new section or just any implications there.
Are you talking about RDA, RDF implementation as a whole?
Yes, as it relates to this 505 field project.
Oh, you know, it should be like when we implement new RDA is sort of the earliest time that we could potentially start using application profiles for the type of data that we're creating. So catalogers are going to be trained in the new RDA, and the reason why we're doing this is because we are convinced that it will be easier for catalogers to implement RDA in the ontology that is meant specifically for the implementation of RDA. So trying to squeeze it into MARC21 or trying to squeeze it into BibFrame, we think is going to be more difficult and require more sort of specialized training than just looking at the RDA toolkit that we're supposed to be using for our cataloging rules and plopping it right into an application profile that matches it perfectly.
Thank you.
I'll just add, not an RDA expert, but it appears to me that RDA, the cataloging standard and the vocabulary ontology data standard have a lot of options, and so that's where I guess your application profile comes in. What choices does your institution make when you come across something that is an aggregation of something, whether it's chapters or or actual works that are contained in a volume or published together? How you're going to deal with it? There's a lot that's not mandated, but that your institution will have to think through. And then the tools that you use, whether it's Marva or Sinopia, whatever, can be configured with profiles that help you to follow through. But people are going to need training to understand what these concepts are and what their choices are. I agree. With whichever vocabulary you use.
And again, Benjamin Riesenberg, who I think is in on this call, is heading up a project to start creating application profiles for RDA. And that's really necessary before anyone tries to implement the new RDA toolkit. It's an exercise in futility to try to apply something that isn't complete. So, you know, the PCC and various cataloging communities need application profiles right now.
So I guess I'd like to ask the audience, Do you think this was a useful presentation? It kind of got down in the weeds a little bit in terms of the details of our decision-making process. But that's something I've always wanted to be sort of a fly on the wall on some of these decisions that are made at a very high level about what to do about mapping data. So this gave you a little bit of a fly on the wall view. If so, we may plan some more in the future.
Yeah, Laura, I think we are at time now. So I think maybe we can continue your questions on Slack. I think there's been some pretty active conversations going on there. So you and Crystal should definitely take a look at that when we're done. But I think it's time to close this out. We're just at time. And thank you very much for your presentation and to our facilitator and Slack moderator. And of course, the participants and the speakers. So thank you, Laura and Crystal. Bye, everyone.